The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 167, airing on April 30th. Don, we're back at it again this week. I don't have jet lag, and we got a pretty fun show teed up for everybody. We've had a pretty good day here.
Yeah. You say you don't like turkeys, but I got to wonder if you're not the turkey expert after what happened today.
We got a fun story we're going to share with you, and I hope this works. We're recording the podcast as people who've been listening have heard. Joe Johnson and Al Foster, two of the most important people in Don's life that I've gotten to also be really good friends with over the last 10 years, came out to Kentucky to turkey hunt with me. And we had an unbelievable afternoon. I had them in a hay bale blind, and two gobblers came in and they doubled up. And I have never seen Joe Johnson that excited in my entire life. So,
yeah. Well, Joe and Al, they're my brothers from other mothers. So I'm real happy for them. Glad you could be a part of it as well. So wish I could have been there.
So we're gonna spend this first part of the episode talking a little bit about this turkey hunt. I got it on video. The hay bale blind is obviously not big enough for three people when one of them is the size of me. Al and Joe are not that big, but three of us in there is just a little bit too tight. So I dropped them off and I went up in the elevated blind and was watching from about 90 yards away this whole thing unfold in front of everybody. So I got my cell phone out. I didn't have my big camera. I wish I would have taken it, but I got my phone out and I actually videoed those two toms walking in and those guys shooting. And we're going to show that here in just a little bit. And I hope before they head back to Illinois, they both have another turkey tag. We're going to try to get them another bird before they leave. I hope they're going to do the voiceover on this video because it's absolutely hysterical what all went down. And we'll play that here in just a second. But I know all the people kind of roll their eyes sometimes at me when I say I hate turkeys. But I'm telling you what, I still don't like turkeys. But seeing the smile on those two guys' faces tonight and how much they enjoyed that, I enjoyed that just as much as they did. And I didn't even have a gun in my hand. So,
yeah, that's awesome. I still got the turkeys on my place. I'm seeing them almost every single day. And, people talk about how smart turkeys are. These things I got at my house are stupid. I mean, I can drive by on my four-wheeler or side by side as I'm doing work on the farm, and these things will be 30 yards away from me, just going about their business. Of course, they'll stop and look at me, but you couldn't do that with a deer. I know, especially a mature buck. But I've got them now. I'm telling you, I got at least three hens, and it's a young Jake that I've seen. I thought it was a gobbler. It's just a young Jake. He's got a beard that's probably about 2 inches long. But I'm sure they're nesting on my place in that switchgrass because that's where I see them a lot is along the edge of the switchgrass. Yeah. So I'm guessing I'm going to have turkeys from here on out.
Yeah. It was so funny to watch these two toms. Like I said, I saw them a lot earlier than those guys did because the crown and the hill, they had to basically get skyline coming back the alfalfa field. And I set this blind up next to where I had plowed for my cornfield, knowing that they would walk that corner instead of cutting across the rough plowed ground. And I'm telling you, those turkeys fell into those guys' lap. They actually got too close. and the footage is hilarious. But I'm telling you what, the footage after it, and I ended up getting one squeal out of Joe on video, and you're gonna laugh. His arms were all waving around. It was so cool to see those two guys get so excited about it. So today was a good turkey day for me because I got to see two of our really good friends that mean so much to us get to enjoy the outdoors, and that's something really special. I'll remember today for a really long time.
Well, that's what it's all about. I've said many times the best thing that deer hunting ever did for me was the people that it brought into my life. And Joe and Al and you there's three of them right there. So, like I said, I wish I could have been there to see it.
Well, we tried to FaceTime you because I wanted you to see this reaction of Joe running around the field. But you thought I butt dialed you, so you didn't pick up. So by the time we got a hold of you, it was already over. But I tell you what, let's go ahead and if this works, it'll be good. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna have to do some editing and take this part out so you won't hear it anyway. But I'm gonna play the. It's not great footage. Again, it's off my cell phone from about 90 yards away. But I'm gonna play this, and hopefully before those two guys go back, I'm gonna get them to do a voiceover for the video and let you guys share this. It's pretty cool. So we'll tee that up right now. All right. Well, we never got a chance for the guys to do their own voiceover on this, so I'm going to give you the quick lowdown of it and just let the audio play for some of it on the recovery footage. But basically, here's the two gobblers on the first afternoon. This is about 4:30 in the afternoon. I put them in the hay bale blind right next to plowed corn ground. You can see the little grass strip in between it. It just acts like a big funnel for the turkeys when they're coming through. They had a Jake and a hen decoy out right on the edge of that alfalfa. So all that green that you see up there on the top where the turkeys are. So they're coming in. They're getting ready for a double. Both the guys are up. They'd already decided which one they were going to shoot at. And then this is where it starts getting a little funny. There's the first miss, the second miss. Al gets his on the second shot, and Joe gets his on the third. So 5 shots total. I'm jumping up and down in the blind and start making my way over there. This gets a little bit funny here, so I'll just let the audio play. How's that for a double? I thought y'all were gonna run out of bullets there for a minute. I don't know why I called them bullets, but it sounded real redneck and hillbilly. So I think I got it all on video.
Are you kidding me?
No.
I said, Joey, you shoot the one on the left. He shot. Mine started moving. I cracked at him. He jumped back, and I drilled him on the second one. He said he shot. I didn't even hear him shoot.
You both shot. You both got him on the second shot.
He said he shot 3 times.
I was wrong there. I didn't even know that Joe shot the third time.
I have to look at the footage on that. That made quick work of it tonight.
It's awesome, man.
Joe doesn't usually get too excited, but this was pretty good. So after going back and actually watching it, Al got his on the second shot, and Joe got his on the third. They ended up getting him down, so that's all that matters.
Oh, boy.
But neither one of them.
When I saw them
so
coming
excited
together, I'm like, man, I hope they get a double.
That one was bad.
And Joe's actually
He
been
started
sick. He's got
running.
bronchitis, so
When he
he's
started
been
running to catch up,
he's
I
been
thought,
coughing a lot.
here we go.
Let's look at him, Joe. Step on that thing's
This is
head
my
and make sure
favorite
you
part
don't let him
here.
flog you.
Listen real close.
He's down.
Watch your nuts, Joe.
Al says,
Yeah,
"Watch your nuts, Joe."
Got him in the head an awful lot.
Big turkeys, Terry.
I knew they were good birds.
This one here's the 3-year-old.
This one's got good spurs.
This one's got good ones. I bet they're brothers.
Ah!
That's more fun than bucking a mud.
Let's see him, Joe, and then we'll go over and look at Al's.
Nice spurs.
So was this the one that was originally on the right or the left? Did they cross after you shot? Okay. So this was the one that was coming up the middle of the field.
He's the one that runs.
Hold that beard up there, Joe.
This one's got a brush.
That's a good bird right there. Nice. Look at that. Ended up being just over a 10-inch beard on both of them, but there was a little bit of a surprise later on.
Yeah, I'd like to get some real good pictures. You know,
I see his legs.
oh yeah.
You're the man.
Thank you, buddy. Love you for that.
God,
let's
we
go
ain't
look
been
at
here an hour.
Let's go look at Al's here.
Man, coached him right in there, man. Just go.
Well, I knew he'd be a while before you all could see him. I'm like,
Joey says, I see him. I said, where? And then their heads were so
we didn't end up
big,
getting
and I saw
recovery
their
footage.
head.
He started flopping around and flogging, so I had to end up stepping on his head. We won't show that part on
He got
YouTube.
the first, dude. He don't want to give it up. You know what's nice, Terry? We just don't even have to hurry now. The rest of the day, the whole trip's made.
There's a picture of both of them with their beards hanging out and tail fans up. Big smiles out of both of them. That was one of my favorite pictures that we got of the whole time, was them getting ready to walk back to the truck and having both of them had it over their shoulder. I wanted to include this picture. After we got to looking around, after tagging the turkeys, Al started looking around on his and he says, I think this thing has a double beard. And then we started looking, and believe it or not, even though the picture doesn't show it, you can only see 4 of them in the picture right in underneath of that feather. There's actually 5 individual beards on this turkey, completely separated. So it ended up being a 5-bearded turkey. Both of them ended up being right under 22 pounds, both with their primary beard about 10 inches long. So awesome afternoon hunt on the first day. Glad we got to go out and get the pressure off to get 2 tags. So the next morning, it was really foggy. About an hour after daylight, you can see this turkey coming up the grass strip in between the 2 lanes. And this got a little interesting. So we didn't really know what was going on. Obviously, I couldn't talk to the guys. But when this turkey gets up here to the corner, he absolutely locks up and doesn't move. And I couldn't figure out why they weren't shooting, but Al wanted Joe to shoot the next bird. Al shot a lot of turkeys, and Joe shot several, but just not as many. And Al wanted to give Joe the first chance. And I'm sitting here going, why isn't this turkey dead? Well, I'm going to spare everybody the agony. That turkey sat there for over 4 minutes without even moving. And I spliced it away here in the video in just a minute. And what ended up happening was you can see the backside of the blind where it has those zipper holes in it. So Al could see him out the side hole, and Joe, who was on the left side of the blind, couldn't see because of in the middle, and he was so close they were scared to move. So he needed to take a step in either direction so Joe could see him through the window as he was kind of shooting in front. So I just spliced out. But 4 minutes later, something caught the corner of my eye, and I look over, and here comes 4 jakes running up this plowed field. And of course, the guys in the blind didn't have any clue what was going on, but I figured something was getting ready to happen one way or another. I just wasn't sure how this was all going to go down. You can see there on the left side of your screen, there's 2 of them, and just in a second, you'll see all 4. And when this turkey finally, the Tom up on the hill, finally sees these 4, he starts getting really anxious. So afterwards, Al knows so much more about turkeys than I do, but Al says it's very common for jakes to gang up and go after toms in situations like this. So Al's theory of it was, since he was using a jake decoy with that hen, that Tom had maybe gotten his tail whipped a few times by those jakes, and he was a little leery going in. That's why he'd locked up. The jakes weren't out in the field yet, but you can see that he gets a little nervous, starts turning around, but he turns just enough right before he splits. Joe just smashes him right in the back of the head. So pretty cool shot, and only one that time, so Joe didn't have to empty his shotgun. And then you can see the jake running by. But I thought it was interesting how Al said his theory there. He saw that jake decoy, and with all those jakes, kind of ganging up on him, that's why he locked up. But there's Joe's second turkey of the day, or second trip of the week, excuse me. He was a little bit lighter. I believe he was 19 pounds, but also had a 10-inch beard. Good picture there with Al. And then I had to jump in for a picture with him. Awesome memories. Can't ask for any better. We're still trying at the time of this recording, going out and getting Al's second bird. But whether he gets it or not, just fantastic trip with 3 of the 4 tags punched.
All right. Well, I can't wait for you to watch this, Don. You didn't see it. We're recording, and I'm going to have to edit that in later, but probably here after we get done the podcast, I'm going to text it to you and let you watch it. But pretty cool story.
Yeah, Joe doesn't get too fired up, but every once in a while you get a rise out of him, and it's pretty funny to see.
Yep. So our plan this week, it's supposed to rain a little bit. That was the huge part about this, is because we got 2 birds tagged before the rain hit in, so we don't have to go quite as hard in the rain. It's a little bit tougher in the rain, but we can take the next 3 days, and even if they want to get really aggressive and go after some birds and run and gun a little bit, the pressure isn't on, since they both have a bird in the freezer already. So we're going to try to hunt a couple days. If we don't get on any more birds at my place, we got a couple. One of your consulting clients is graciously offered for me to bring them over there and try to shoot a bird over there. So that's available to us. So we appreciate that. But we'll keep everybody posted and see if we can get 2 more birds for those guys on the ground before the end of the weekend. But let's take a quick break and listen to a spot from Osseo, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit about, you got a ton of work done on your property this week, and I want to go through all of that and dissect that a little bit, and before we answer some questions for the night. So stay tuned.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit OsseoGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Osseo Gear, prepare to be invisible.
All right, Don. Well, thanks to the folks at Osseo. The people that are hearing this on Sunday, April 30th, today is the last day for the turkey bundle package. So only the people listening on April 30th have till the end of the night to get that 20% off, plus I believe a $30 gift card. So pretty good deal from the folks at Osseo. I did text Joe Miles after those 2 shot that turkey. He was all impressed. So he wanted me to tell them congratulations on the podcast. So, but thanks to Joe Miles and all the Osseo guys for helping us out on this podcast. Let's dive into what you've been working on all week, Don. You said that you've gotten probably a lot of work the last 2 weeks. Austin Razor was up at your place the week before, and you kept going even though he came back home. Let's talk a little bit about what you got done.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've got more done this spring than ever, and I am so fired up for the way this property is coming together. And I stated a while back that I'm going to make this property twice as good as it has been.
Right.
And a lot of people have kind of smirked at that because it's pretty good as it is. And making it twice as good is really going to be something. But there's some pieces to the puzzle falling in place. And one of them just happened yesterday. So, I bought the new 40, or actually traded my neighbor 40 acres for 40 that butts right up to me. And a lot of people don't know this, but I had my original 120 acres, and then down the creek a ways, I had a small 5-acre tract of land. It was just a square block of timber that the creek ran through. surrounded by ag fields. Well, my new 40 connects that 5 acres with my original farm. Well, there's another piece of the puzzle, a very important piece of the puzzle that a piece of property I've been trying to buy for some time now, for several months, and that fell into place this week. And actually, the surveyor was here yesterday, and we surveyed off, and it's only going to be about 3.5 to 4 acres when that survey comes back. But it's a very critical piece. It's going to allow me fantastic access to the far reaches of my property, and it's also going to allow me to add an additional food plot behind my house where the majority of my food is, right there in the center of this. I've talked about I've got 1.5 miles of creek now with all the cover on both sides of that creek for 1.5 miles. Well, all that main food is right in the middle. So I'm pulling deer from 2 directions down that creek to my food. And I actually ran out of food this spring and I needed to add another food plot. And I was scratching my head, where am I going to do it at? And then this falls into place, just perfect timing. God's timing is perfect. So now I get to add another probably 2 acres or so of food right here in the perfect location. So the
right in the
pieces of
core.
the puzzle.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
I mean, you're protected in all directions. One of the things that people that were at the master class, if they're listening to this, are kind of envisioning in their head that I think is going to be a really big game changer for this small track, is it's going to give you access to 2 or 3 different spots on your farm for your predominant wind. So your westerly winds, now you're going to be able to access there where you couldn't before. So the westerly winds you were hunting over on another corner because you didn't have access to this area. Now you're going to have access to, for a westerly wind, to hunt a great spot of your farm. That's big.
Yeah. I'm creating another inside corner. And actually, when Austin was here last week, we put up 2 ladder stands, 2 brand new ladder stands. And I went in this week, and I've got 4 new stands on my place this off season that weren't there before. One of the things I did this week is I went in and I got my bow hangers and my camera mount put in the tree, and my pull up rope for my bow on those stands. So I've got 4 new stands now, totally ready to go. I'll totally stay away from them now until I go back and hunt them. Another thing I did was I sprayed around all my fruit trees, to keep the weeds and stuff down. I've got fruit trees in 4 different locations on the farm, and I've got those all sprayed. The TSI work is pretty much done. I got just a little bit more to cut once this sale goes through. They don't want me doing a bunch of work and getting hurt on this property until the sale's done. So
Sure.
They wouldn't allow me to come in and do anything, but this should be wrapped up really quick now that the survey's done. By mid-May, I should have everything wrapped up.
Are you still going to try to plant miscanthus on it this year, or are you going to wait till next year to do that?
Well, I've got miscanthus saved in the cooler at Real World for me, and if we can get everything tied up here in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to try to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And that won't take very long, a couple hours, and I'll have that strip done. But if the weather here, we're dry as can be, and we're missing the rains. Like today, all the rain went south of us. I think you guys are going to get it tomorrow.
We're going to get that rain tomorrow. Yep.
But it went south of us this afternoon, and we totally missed it. The last rain we got was probably less than a half an inch, and it dried up in 24 hours. And the next 10 days in the forecast showed no rain whatsoever. So anyway, what else did I get done? I did a consulting visit here in Illinois. Even though it was here in Illinois, it was a 4.5-hour drive for me. Oof. It was about the farthest you could get in Illinois and still be in the state from me in the northwest corner. Tomorrow I'm leaving for Ohio to look at some properties, basically to purchase and, set up and then put them back on the market. And then also doing a consulting visit for Mark Fisher, 360 Hunting Blinds, on a new property he's got in Ohio.
Gotcha.
So,
Well, if it's all right, I want to ask you a couple more questions about how your property is coming together. So, you had the isolated tract that you've owned for years to the south of your main farm. The 40-acre tract that you traded is going to connect the two, and then the additional small little piece that we've been talking about for access adjoins that 40-acre tract along the side. So when you look at this, does it add any more stand sites or blind locations to your existing 5-acre or 120? Or are all of the new stand locations on the new 40 and new 3? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I've actually added 2 new stands on my original 120. Just
Gotcha.
one stand I moved about 30 yards from where it was at. I needed to funnel some more deer movement. There was too many deer was passing out of range. So those folks who are part of the Whitetail Master Academy have seen the videos that I've been posting regular as I do these things. I've been probably averaging a video a day, some days 2 videos on these things. And so there's 2. The one stand I moved about 30 yards, and there's another new spot that I've thought long and hard about how to hunt this spot. And there's a little shingle oak tree that finally got big enough I thought it would hide me. So I finally hung a stand in it, and that stand is not very high off the ground. That stand is probably literally 9 feet off the ground. It's not a big tree at all, but it's a shingle oak that'll hold its leaves in the winter.
That's
It's
where
in
you
the
have
right
your
spot.
cover.
Yep. And so that's going to allow me to hunt. It's going to be more of a morning rut stand. It's on the downwind edge of a spot on the farm where the deer really like to bed. Probably it may be the preferred bedding spot on the whole property. And so I'm going to and I'll be able to hunt it with any south wind. Anything out of the south, I'll be able to slip in and hunt that tree. I've wanted to stand there for years. There just wasn't a tree there, and this shingle oak is really pushing it. I mean, it's not very big, but it's big enough. I think I can hide in it.
So you can hunt in it, but I'm not going to be able to. I'll look like the Michelin man up in the big blob. So that was where I was wanting you to go with that question. Is not only is this 40 plus 3 giving you new stand sites on that acreage, but it's also adding some better situations on your existing that you've had for years, just due to the layout. And you kind of drew up when you did this land trade. You kind of drew up how you wanted the shape of this 40 to be along the creek specifically for these situations.
Right. So when I approached the landowner about trading the 40 for 40, I had drawn up 2 different options, and both options included the entire creek and every tree on both sides. One option gave me more land on one side of the creek. The other one gave me more land on the other side of the creek, and that and he took one of those options. I also told him I was willing to listen to any other options he might come up with, as long as I got the entire creek and every tree. Being a farmer, yeah, he didn't that he was all for that because he's a farmer. He wanted the tillable
he can't
land.
make any money off trees.
Right. So the thing of it is that tillable ground, when we made the trade last fall, it had already been planted in winter wheat. So it's in winter wheat now. And as part of the deal, I allowed him to go ahead and have the crop this year. So he will harvest that wheat about the 1st of July, and then he will do a double crop of soybeans. And after that, it's mine. So I've got more projects to do on that tillable acre, specifically planting a big patch of switchgrass that I'm not going to be able to do until a year from now.
Right.
But I'm telling you, I've had my hands full. I really didn't need any more projects this year, but I'm telling you, this thing is coming together so fantastic. And Austin was a big part of that. Man, that guy is a workaholic now. I would just turn him loose with stuff, and I'd go show him what I wanted done, then I'd go do something else myself. And at one point, Steve Shields was here, so I was filming with Steve. And today, when I went in and sprayed those last fruit trees on that 5-acre woodlot down the creek, I had Austin go in and do a TSI cut there, and I hadn't even seen it until today. and I went in there, and he just did a fantastic job. There was one spot where a big tree fell over the deer trail that leads past my stand, and he cut all the branches out of the way, and he cleared that trail so those deer could continue right on past my stand. So just a fantastic worker and becoming a really good friend too. So
yeah,
think the world of him and Ann.
yep. For the people who don't know who we're talking about, Ann and Austin Razor. Ann is a graphic designer. She actually does a lot of work for Real World and the podcast. And then Austin is a Real World dealer on the east side of Cincinnati. And both of them actually serve on the board of Lester's Feet. So when we talk about the board that helps run the organization and talk with families and work with everything, both Ann and Austin help with that. So, you mentioned that your existing property is going to add 2 stands. Add that up and give everybody a perspective. How many, there's 2 on the old one that you gained. How many total new stands or box blinds are you going to have with all of this renovation and acquisition of property?
Well, right now I've got 4 for this year. Now, once I do the other projects, I'm going to probably add 2 more.
Is any of them going
on
to
the
be
new
360 blinds or all just tree
Yep.
stands?
Nope, the 360. But actually, the next 2 are probably going to be. Well, one of them is definitely going to be a 360 blind,
Okay.
and the other one I don't know yet.
So the big question mark now is how fast you can get this 3-4 acre tract done, get the miscanthus in, and whether that's going to be a spring or a fall food plot. But regardless, before hunting season, that's going to be in a food plot one way or another.
Right. Yeah, and I'm telling you, the pieces are just falling into place like I never dreamed possible. And you think about what I went through a year ago and the difference in a year. You know, a year ago, I had lost my lease on this piece I just traded for. I'd leased it for years, and I lost the lease, and 3 guys that had never, to my knowledge, even been in the neighborhood, show up 10 days before season, and they start pounding this woods right next to me day after day. I had a trail camera where I was seeing them come and go, and they ended up killing 3 of my bucks, or I shouldn't say my bucks. They ended up killing 3 bucks in October. And then I bought the property that I traded on November 1st. There was a land auction in the area, and I bought a square 40-acre piece of farm ground with the hopes that I could trade it. I had no idea if this guy was going to take me up on my offer or not, and he did. And from that point forward, things have been rolling my way. And I think back about it through the whole situation, and when those guys showed up on the neighboring property that I'd hunted for years, and I'd worked my butt off for a long time developing my property and managing this deer herd, and I almost feel like I was being tested on how I'm going to deal with that adversity. And if it would have happened 20 years earlier, I probably wouldn't have handled it very well. But I've learned this, put things in God's hands. When negative comes along, you just trust Him, and that's what I did. And I didn't have any ill words for the other guys, and never had any contact with them. If they would have came and needed help tracking a deer or whatever, I would have done what should have been done. I'd have done the right thing. But I just stayed back and didn't really. I mean, I wouldn't say I was mad. I was frustrated. Put it that way. I was very frustrated.
You were frustrated, all right. Because
Yeah.
people have to understand this deer that you're documenting on the 200, the journey, was walking up and down this creek the entire time.
Well, I can even take it a step further, Terry, because I had a camera where these guys were entering this property. And by the way, they were trespassing across the ground to get to this ground they was hunting. I didn't even throw a stink about that. I had them walking in front of my camera where they was trespassing day after day, and they put a camera literally probably 15 feet from my camera facing the same way. So I knew what deer they were getting pictures of, because those deer were walking in front of both our cameras, and that giant deer was walking in front of both those cameras. So I knew they had pictures of him.
Well, let's just hope they were using a spy point. It might not have gotten all the pictures.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. He came by so often they had to have seen him at least once. But they was going in no matter what direction. They was going in the same access point, morning, evening, it didn't matter which way the wind was blowing, all hours of the day. So well, never mind. I'm not going to bash these guys. They hunted their way and I hunt my way.
At the end of the day, they had permission to be there. They might not have known exactly how to get in without walking on another neighbor's property, but they had permission to be there.
Yeah.
I know how frustrated you were, and there was a couple of us that knew the situation that were trying to talk you off the ledge as you were frustrated the whole fall and let's just say not in a good mood. But you said you turned it over to God, but there's a little bit another step to that. The amount of work that you've had, and I'm going to brag about you for a little bit because you don't do this. The amount of work that you've done to build your business from nothing, when you've talked about in the past when you and Robin used to have your lights shut off down in the old house, to the businesses that you've built, and the passion that you've had for this has taken a long time and it's been a long journey. But 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been in a position where you could have gone and bought that other 40 acres in hopes that he would have done that trade. And there's a lot of dynamics to this whole situation now that we can kind of talk about it. But I think it's also a testament of the dedication and hard work that you, with those two bare hands, built these companies with the passion for deer hunting that you have. That's basically put yourself in a position that you could have made that deal happen financially, where 20 years ago you can't. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is, 20 years ago, financially, you were probably in worse shape than a lot of our listeners that today say, I could never do that. But it was 20 years of your dedication and you're finding a way to do it, whether it was side jobs, side hustles, all of this kind of stuff. So I want to talk about this to just encourage everybody, not as much as brag about you, but encourage all those people. 10 years ago, financially, I wouldn't be able to do what I've done. It's just, we found ways to pursue this passion, to keep growing and building as best we can. And all of those guys that say they can't afford a piece of property, or they can't afford a lease, or they can't, do this, stay after it. You might not be able to do it today, but 20 years ago, you couldn't have done what you did today to lock up this piece of ground, which you just said is going to make your farm twice as good.
Yeah. And, you're right, Terry. There's never been a better time in my lifetime for someone with ambition to start a business. Never has there been a better time than right now. It doesn't matter who you call. You can call a plumber, an electrician, a roofer, anybody you call today, they've got a waiting list. You're probably waiting months. I just called about a new pole building the other day, and I'm going to have to wait 11 months. They've got an 11-month waiting list for pole building. Folks, if you've got ambition, if you've got work ethic, there has never been a better time. And, what frustrates me about my critics is they don't realize that I probably started out with less than they did. Now I'm 60 years old. A guy that's 40 criticizing me, if he would have seen me at 40, I probably had less at 40 than what he's got at 40. But I just kept grinding and just kept plugging away. And, slowly things came together. And, we talked about it. We had a question here a few weeks ago. Someone wanted business advice. And, I didn't. My businesses aren't successful, I don't think, because of me. I think they're successful because I've recognized that I need smarter people than me on my team, and people like you, Dwayne Hopkins, Janice, and the list just goes on and on. Those are the people that have made me successful because they've got talents and knowledge about things that I don't have. And I was just, the only thing smart I did was I was smart enough to get out of those people's way and let them, run with it. And they've made me look good in the process.
You were also smart enough to separate yourself away from other people too. So I think it's associate with the right people, disassociate with the wrong people. And a lot of that has has really caused this. So again, I don't want this to be a hoorah, promote Don Higgins conversation. I really don't want people to take it that way, even though there's probably going to be some people that do it. I'm spinning this as a different way because I knew you 18 years ago to where you would have never been able to do this deal the way it all unfolded. And yes, I think all of it is a God thing. You said that you turned it over to God, but you really turned it over to God many years ago, and he's just blessed you. And I just hope that the people listening to this, if you're in one of those spots today and you say, there's no way I could ever do that, don't count yourself out. I mean, you're watching or listening to two absolute redneck idiots talk about deer hunting on a podcast that gets, I don't even know how many listeners a week. Just overwhelmingly blessed, and we hope that encourages you guys. But congratulations on locking down this thing. I can't wait to see. And then, we're going to take a break of the master classes this year so you can get this developed. I think we're going to have a lot of attendees want to come back for the second version of the home farm to see how all this lays out and has come together. I think there's going to be a lot of people want to see it.
Well, I hope so, but God's timing is perfect, and I appreciate what I have so much today because I had nothing at one time, and I just I want other people to be successful, and if they can learn something from my story, then that's great. But you're right about the property and the master classes, Terry. When this is said and done, I think there's going to be a lot of people want to come back because I literally think it's going to be twice as good as it was. Right now I'm shooting a giant about every 3 years on this farm. I haven't shot a deer. I haven't shot a buck for 2 years, and people find that hard to believe, but it takes a pretty special deer to get me interested anymore. I think that when this property is all set up, I'm going to at least be able to shoot one every other year. And there may be times where I go 2 or 3 years in a row and shoot good ones, and then I have to wait a year or so. But I think that I'm no longer going to have to be waiting every 3 years to shoot a giant.
And
now,
I
I'm not
think that,
saying 200 inches, but I'm saying that
sure,
a good, big, mature deer.
But I think part of that is taking some neighboring pressure away to where you don't have anybody hunting that direction for a long way. You got a lot of creek bottom with no trees that anyone else can physically hunt. And then the second thing is you're just going to be able to hold more deer, with the additional cover and food. So there's two elements that I think actually make that possible, what you just said.
Yeah, I think the layout of the property, it's so long and narrow now that when I've added this acreage, it's just made it longer. And, a buck can be on his feet for a mile and a half and never leave my place and always be in great cover and food the entire mile and a half. And that's what I think I'm going to be able to do better than anything is I'm going to be able to add age to the bucks that I've got. The big negative I see is that I think I'm going to have to be a lot more aggressive on my buck culling. I'm going to have to get more hunters in here shooting the bucks that need taken out so that the right ones can stay around.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing we kind of talked to a little bit about with access and that predominant wind that you have there, especially southwest, west, and northwest wind, it's going to give you more stand sites for those different winds that you don't have to kind of keep the pressure off of them and save those honey hole spots for when the time is perfect.
Well, I'll tell you, I cannot wait for this to all get done because I've got huge plans, and there's just going to be a lot of opportunities to share it as well. And now that I've got turkeys coming on, I may have Al and Joe show up for a turkey hunt.
All right. Well, good stuff. Again, I hope people don't take it as a shameless promotion of Don. It's just I wanted to talk a little bit about that to encourage everybody else because trust us, people, we've been in the same boat as you where, we struggled with worrying about whether we're taking money away from our family to play in our hobby. So we get it. We just hope to encourage you to find a way, but you've always been the first one to say keep your priorities in order too, right?
Well, that's for sure. And to be honest, if I had to go back, and the one big regret that I have, and I hope any young guy listening, pays real close attention here, because if I look back at my life, my biggest regret is that I didn't spend more time with my girls when they was little. If I could go back and do it all over again, I'd give up a lot of days in the deer woods to spend it with my two girls. And so if you got young kids at home, I tell people all the time. I just told a young man yesterday that was here with the surveyor. He had to be a little bit late because he was doing something with his daughter, and I told him, I said, take it full advantage, because in the blink of an eye, those kids are going to be gone and out of the house. So any young guy listening, if you got young kids, you spend every minute you can with them, because in the blink of an eye, they're going to be gone, and they're going to walk out that door and go live a life of their own, and they're not coming back. You get one chance to do it, and I wish I would have spent more time with my girls instead of in the deer woods.
Yep. All right. Well, I think this is a good opportunity to move on to the first question of the week. I'm going to throw this up on the screen and have you read it, and we'll move on to the next segment. Okay.
Yep. Okay, this one comes from David Robbins from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He says, Don, I'm hiring a local farmer to plant corn for me in 3 weeks since I don't have the equipment for that. It will be roughly 3 acres. My question is, when should I spread nitrogen fertilizer? I would just be using 4600 with a 4-wheeler spreader. I don't want to hurt the plants if I spread at the wrong time, and don't want to go without and not have any corn for them. Thank you. David, you're talking about urea. Urea is nitrogen, basically granular nitrogen, 4600. You want to spread that either, if you're going to work the ground, you want to spread it right before you work the ground, because that, believe it or not, that granular urea will slowly evaporate if it's sitting on the surface. For example, I spilled some in my concrete floor of my shed a couple of years ago. Had a small pile there, and I thought I'd come back the next day or so and sweep it up. Well, it was a week or so before I got back, and when I got back, that pile was a fraction the size that it was when I spilled it. So that urea will slowly evaporate. What I like to do when using urea is I'll spread it, and then I immediately hook onto the disc, and I'll disc that plot and disc that urea into the soil. Another way you can do it is, if you're going to do no-till, is spread that right before a rain and let that rain dissolve it and start washing it into the soil. But you do not want to spread it if that corn is up, because that urea gets on that corn, it'll burn it, and could actually kill it. So I'm not saying it's going to kill every plant, but one of those granulars gets down in those corn leaves and it could kill that particular plant. So that's the deal on that urea.
Yeah, the people that side dress or they spray nitrogen after germination, they usually are using those wands down in between and putting it on the soil right beside the stalk. Post germination, you got to be pretty careful of it. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like he doesn't have any tillage equipment and the farmer's doing it. He's spreading it with a 4-wheeler. So I would guess the best option is find a time that he can get out there during a rain or right before a rain and get it on the ground and let the water soak it in would be the best bet if he doesn't have any tillage equipment.
Mm-hmm. You know, another good way to apply nitrogen to corn is they make liquid 28% nitrogen or liquid 32%, and it's as thin as water. It looks like a really weak iced tea, maybe, or a watered down iced tea, just discolored water. But you can spray that right through your sprayer right onto the soil, and that's pretty much what I do right after I plant. Is I spray that down. I put my residual in with it, and spray both at the same time. But one word of caution is that liquid nitrogen is very caustic. If it comes in contact with anything metal, it'll corrode it. So you want to make sure you wash up your equipment good right after you get done spraying.
Yep. Good advice. Before we move on to the next question, I'm going to take a quick break. I mentioned on the podcast 2 weeks ago that I was going to donate a land consulting job to a group of guys that are not only consulting clients, but they've been to the master class great group of people and network of churches from the Western Kentucky area. So all the way around Bowling Green, Russellville, our friends down in Guthrie are all connected to this Haiti ministry. And there's a fundraiser that's getting ready to happen. So, and just go over the details of where you can participate. There's a lot of really cool things. We're not involved. Again, this is one of those deals where Don and I are not involved. We're not promoting it. I just made a donation of a consulting job to help raise money. So I'm gonna play this segment here real quick. For those of you who are interested, Kevin's gonna leave his contact number, and you can give them a call. But again, please don't necessarily expect Don or I to have all the details of it. We're just helping kind of support it by a donation of services. So we're gonna play that real quick and then come back for question number 2.
Well, hey, everyone. We were going to try to get Kevin Miller on to make this announcement, but due to scheduling conflicts and me having the guys in turkey hunting this week, we just did not have time to do it. We'll try to have that up for next week's podcast. But to just get us going for this week, I wanted to read a short announcement about this fundraiser that's going to support Haiti missions that the Chasing Giants podcast is more than happy to donate to help raise money. So I'm just going to read this written document that Kevin Miller did, and then I apologize, but we'll have him on next week, hopefully. A little bit about what we do. This is an annual auction that is hosted the third Friday evening and Saturday of May at the Christian County Event Center in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. There are various activities and many high-quality items to auction off, such as Amish-made furniture, electric bikes, tools, 360 hunting blinds, and lots of good food by donation, and much, much more. There is a silent auction board and several live auction rings. 100% of the proceeds of this event go to support 18 different missions in Haiti. These missions range in ways of operation, such as technical schools to learn different trades to teach people how to generate income for their own families, and literature distribution, and practically everything in between. The money is used to put on the event has already been supplied through fundraisers and donations. So that means all of the money generated from silent auctions and donations at the auction goes directly to it. The board of directors have discussed how to receive bids from podcast listeners, especially as it relates to the consulting visit that the Chasing Giants podcast has donated. And the way they're going to do it is they've decided to have a sealed bid system with a deadline of May 19th at 12 o'clock noon Central Time. The highest podcast bid will then be placed on the silent auction board on sale day, which will soft close at 1 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, May 20th. These bids can be placed by mail, email, or by text. So basically, by the 19th, you need to contact Kevin Miller and tell him what your bid is, and then the highest of each of those closed bids will then be put in the silent auction. So Kevin's contact number is 270-893-8340. And stay tuned for the next week's Chasing Giants podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more about the consulting visit that's being donated and what goes along with that. So just wanted to get the word out this week, start letting people think about it. Give Kevin Miller a call if you have any questions, 270-893-8340.
All right, Don, we're going to put question number 2 up on the board and have you read it.
All right. Next question comes from Nick Collins from Bay City, Michigan. He says,
Bay
Don and
City,
Terry.
Michigan have you been to Bay City, Michigan, Don?
I don't think so.
Bay City, Michigan is absolutely gorgeous. If people want a place to go in the middle of summer, Bay City, Michigan and Marine City, Michigan, 2 of my favorite places, and there are not many good places I like in Michigan, but those two towns are really neat.
Well, I know there's a lot of deer hunters in Michigan.
Yep.
And most of them have a very strong opinion about anything related to deer hunting. So that's just been my experience anyway. But Nick says, Don and Terry, kudos to you guys for truly utilizing your platform to set such a great example of living and leading while not allowing your Christian values to falter. My question is, how do you cope with the emotional destruction that comes after harvesting such a beautiful animal that you committed years of time and effort into that individual deer? Maybe it's because I'm a new dad to a beautiful 4-month-old daughter, but I simply can't imagine the emotional toll that would come with ending such an incredible era. I felt such a connection after killing a 136-inch deer here in Michigan that I was able to watch all summer. I don't know how I'd react if I had years of experience with him. Well, Nick, that's one of the things that makes what we do so special to me is, just to go out like a lot of folks, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this at all, but just to go out to kill a deer for food or whatever. Um, yeah, that's fun and all that. It's a great experience. It's a good opportunity to spend time with friends and family and all that. But you know, a guy like me, I'm pretty much a loner. Um, I've said it before. I could get in my truck by myself and drive clear to California and never turn the radio on. I don't need to hear another person's voice. And these deer, these big deer, I just feel a connection to. And it's very hard to explain unless you've come across someone who has that same thought process or that same feeling towards these deer. But when you kill one, it's like it's just undescribable. It's like you're happy that you did it, that you've accomplished your goal. You're proud of yourself that you got it done. No matter what the obstacles, hurdles that you face, challenges that you face, you got it done. But at the same time, there's almost a sadness or regret that it's over. And the more you raise the bar to higher levels as far as the quality of the bucks, the size of the bucks you're after, I think the more that feeling takes hold because those bucks are even more rare. So,
Yeah.
here in the Midwest, 150-inch buck is not all that rare. I mean, that's a great trophy, don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of 150-inch bucks out there. When you start chasing an individual buck that's 170 inches or better, you don't just turn around the next day after you kill him and go chase another 170 incher most of the time. They're rare enough that it takes you a while to find the next one. And the sadness is that after you've shot one that you're entering that down period where you don't have a target buck to chase. Right now I've got this buck that I'm after this year, and this is what I live for, is that experience of chasing that deer. It's not killing him. Right now I'm so anxious to get my trail cameras out in July to see what his rack is going to look like this year. I look forward to that as much as I do sitting in a tree stand on October 1st, opening day. But, once it comes to an end, once you put an arrow in that deer and you walked up and put your tag on him, that elation quickly really fades, and you realize that, man, the chase is over. The fun is over. How long is it going to take me to find another one? And, I don't have an answer as to how to deal with that. It's just, for me, it's when that happens, I just start looking for the next one even harder than I look for that one. And because I want to experience it again. And, I know I'm talking to a large audience here, and there's going to be some people out there that can't relate to what I'm saying. And I hope that someday you can. And I don't mean that to sound like I'm talking down to anybody, because I'm absolutely not. There was a time when I heard some of my mentors, like the Wenzel brothers, Roger Rothar, those guys talk about, how sad the kill was. It's not about the, and I'd hear him say, it's not about the kill, it's about the chase, it's about the hunt. And I never understood that years ago because, like most young hunters, I was out there to kill deer. And why would I be sad about killing deer? That's what I'm out there for. But I think it comes with age and it comes with experience. You need both. I don't think a young guy is ever going to know what I'm talking about, and I don't think an inexperienced deer hunter is ever going to know what I'm talking about. It's going to take and I'm not saying you got to be 60 years old, but I don't think you can do it in your 20s. And I don't know what the magical age is. I'm sure it differs from person to person, but you've got to have both experience as a deer hunter, where you've climbed through the ranks, you've been through various phases, and you've got to have some age as a person. And I just mentioned my daughters earlier. I think when you get older, you get more sentimental. And I've heard it said that a young man is always looking ahead and an old man is always looking back. Well, I think I'm kind of at that transition stage where one day I'm looking ahead, and even just here on this podcast tonight, I mean, I've been looking ahead at this property and how good it's going to become. At the same time, I'm looking back, at earlier years in my life where I wished I'd have done some things different. So, I think to experience what I'm talking about here, you've got to reach a certain stage in your life where you're not always looking ahead, but you're also looking back some. And when you look back and you realize how rare a moment it is to walk up on a giant buck that you've watched grow up for multiple years and you finally put the arrow in him, there's just really no way to describe it.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
All right. Question number 3.
This one comes from Mark Dunn from Oak Hill, Ohio. He says, Don and Terry, myself and 2 buddies are looking at buying some old strip mine ground for a hunting property. There's not much topsoil on large parts of it, which is why we might be able to afford it. I've read switchgrass is a good crop for growing in those conditions and can also be baled or grazed by cattle if we want to try to get some income. We'd love to hear your input on your history in property purchasing, management, cattle, and big bucks. God bless. Well, Mark, my second interest after deer would be cows. I've always liked cows since the time I was a little kid, and I've got a small herd of beef cattle now. Cows and deer, that's it for me. But I'm going to be the first to tell you there's not a lot of money in raising cattle. In fact, most of the time, if you break even at the end of the year, you've done pretty good. So you're not going to make a bunch of money raising cattle. As far as switchgrass, I'm not sure why you would want to cut it for hay. I'm sure it can be, or bedding. I had somebody tell me the other day they cut switchgrass for bedding for cattle. If you do that, you've just lost it for deer cover. So, I don't know that I'd get too wrapped up in thinking about that as a form of income. What struck me about your question was that you're looking at a piece of property to buy, and you picked out this particular property because of the price tag. And I've seen a lot of people buy ground because of the price tag, because it was something they could afford, and the property was a big disappointment to them. I don't know the best advice to give you, but you want to be careful about your purchase. To buy land just to be a landowner is a mistake. And I think back in my younger years, I remember a piece of property that I looked at and made an offer on. The offer was turned down. And to be honest, that was God looking out for me. I'm glad that offer got turned down today, because that property would have been nothing but a headache for me. It would have never produced the kind of bucks that I wanted to find there. It was far enough away from my home that it would have been a headache to manage and plant food plots or keep trespassers off or whatever. My advice would be to, wait until a good property comes along. It doesn't have to be a big property. You would be way better off owning a good 20 acres than the wrong 200 acres. So, just keep looking. Don't. What I've seen happen also with a lot of people is they buy a property that's not a real good property. They've tied up their money, and then 6 months, a year later, a good property comes along and they can't do anything about it because their money's all tied up. So that's the thing that jumped out at me about your question was you said the strip mine ground appealed to you because it was cheap enough you could afford it. Well, whatever your budget is, maybe look at some smaller properties. And then you also, the other thing that struck me about your question was about the soil not being that good because it's strip mine ground, and I thought you was alluding to for food plots. Well, in Ohio where you're from, the fact that you can feed year round, even during season, that helps you kind of get around that. You can do some things with through your feeders that will set your property apart from your neighbors. And I don't want to turn this into a real world commercial, but that NutriCrave corn and the NutriCrave deer corn that we're going to be offering this fall, if you've got it in your feeders on your farm, you're going to pull those deer from your neighbor's feeders to some degree. I mean, they're definitely going to prefer it. So there's things you can do if the soil is not good enough. And, I hope I've answered your question here. If not, submit it again and reword it a different way. But I think I've covered it.
For the guys that are dealing with reclaimed ground, there's a lot of that ground available. At what point do you say, I'm going to try to plant some? I mean, you can't go into reclaimed ground and immediately plant corn, but you can get away with some basic legumes in there to try to build some organic matter, things like a soil builder, clover, soybeans, if you got enough space that they don't get overbrowsed. The key is, I think you want to create a lot of tonnage and organic matter that over a period of time, you start building the health of that soil through a reclaiming process. But that's a case by case basis on how much ground it is and how far gone it is. If it's gravel, if it's like a gravel parking lot, there's not a lot you're going to be able to do with it. But if you do have some dirt, you can do some improvement stuff with some legumes and help it.
Forget the cows, though. The cows are going to do nothing but cost you money and take a lot of your time. You're not going to make a land payment with cows.
You got to raise a lot of them to get a lot of any money. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got time for one more question. I'm going to put it up on the board.
All right, this one comes from Brian Johnson from Pana, Illinois. He says, does your same time, same place theory happen during all stages of the season, early, rut, late, or are there specific portions of the season that are more or less significant? That's a great question, Brian. And to be honest, that same time, same place theory, as you call it, plays out a whole lot better up until about the first week in November. During the rut, all bets are off. A hot doe just totally changes things. I mean, a buck is going to be in the same general area, but he could easily be a mile away on the same day that he was last year. Late season, I've seen the late season pattern really tied closely to the weather, more so than a date. So if a strange buck shows up on my place during the late season, it's typically going to be during a period of really bad weather. It's not like he's going to show up on December 15th year after year. He's going to show up when he needs the food the most. And but during the early season and the first stages of the rut, when the bucks are, running scrapes and cruising and the does are not yet in heat, then it plays out very, very close, as far as the same time, same place.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic question. We probably haven't done a good enough job diving into this. To pick that apart a little bit, when you say bad weather in late season is the driving factor, is that the first night of sub-zero temperatures, or are you saying the first extended period where there's a shortage of food and it's bitter cold for a period of time?
Well, it seems to be tied to the bitter cold and snow, really. If you get just cold by itself, yeah, you can get some deer in, but I think it's the snow. When you get like 6 inches or more snow to go with that cold, that's when they come rolling in.
Well, because the ground's covered, they don't have anything else except for sticks up high. So if you got
Right.
standing corn and beans, that's the game changer then.
Yep, for sure. But to back up into the early season, when a buck breaks up from his bachelor group and goes to his fall range, he's going to do that about the same time every year within 24, 48 hours. When he gets into a rut pattern, where he's running scrapes or whatever, he's going to do that about the same time every year within 24, 48 hours. You can take your trail camera history for the month of October and say through the first week in November, and you can pretty much count on that to repeat itself.
Yep. Great question, Brian. I'm glad you asked that. It let Don dive into that just a little bit more. So we got a couple days of the weekend left. You're going to be heading to Ohio, as you mentioned. Please tell our friends at 360 Blinds hello. And while you're working on that property, and then also you're not going to be too awful far away from us. If you end up bored, you can always swing by and see if we can get you on a Thunder Chicken and let you crack one. And I don't think you will find the emotional attachment when you shoot a bird in the face than when you follow a deer for 6 to 7 years and finally kill him.
Well, I probably won't react the same way Joe Johnson did, put it that way. Never know. A lot of people tell me that if I got into turkey hunting, I'd forget about deer, and I just don't think that's quite possible.
I've killed a bunch of turkeys, and I can tell you that I don't think, knowing you, that's not going to happen. So
no, not going to happen, even if I get them here on my home place.
So, well, big things happening on Don's home farm. There's actually big things in the works for this podcast, and there's big things happening for Lester's Feet. And we hope that within the next month, we're going to be able to talk about it and make some new announcements for everybody. We got a lot of good things cooking, and it's only because of the support and the growth that you guys continue to provide us and the support you guys have. Just a simple like or comment down below, it means the world to us and lets all of those algorithms on the backside recommend it for other like-minded hunters. And, the cool thing about this, Don, is the more that this thing grows, it's just the more people that we're going to be able to minister to and share the gospel to, and then eventually possibly help people in need with. So that's the cool thing, how this is all blown up. That's the big picture.
Yeah, we're not at liberty to talk about some things that you and I have had happen this week as well. But let's just say this podcast has gained some attention from places we didn't expect it.
Yeah. So, but our commitment is to still stay true to everybody with our values and not just chase a paycheck with this podcast. That is not what this is about. Fortunately for Don and I, we have other interests that's what feeds our families. We're going to continue to make this as a service to the outdoor community. And the things that we're going to talk about and do, they're things that we think have benefit for each of you that are listeners. And can't wait to share some of that with you. It's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'll just throw this out there as we close here, that if you've got suggestions, things you'd like to hear us talk about or whatever, be sure and throw them out. Like Terry said, we're doing this as a service to a community that supported us in various ways and allowed us to chase our dreams. So we want to give back, and we want to be good stewards of all that we've been given, both of the natural resources, but also the blessings God sent our way. We want to share them and be a blessing to others.
Yep. Going to be a fun week. Help us wish Joe and Al good luck as they chase turkeys for another 2-3 days, and we'll see where it goes. Travel safe to Ohio, and tell Mr. Mark Fisher we all said hello. Hey, don't forget, I need to pick up another 7-foot 360 blind. I have the spot cleared out for it. Don't forget.
Well, I've got some in my shed. I had a semi deliver a load this week.
Make sure one gets saved for me.
All righty. All
right, everybody. Thank you.
God bless everyone.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Buy a Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.